in upstate New York. It's May 5th. The weather is wonderful. It finally matches the calendar. We're here in the woods with a mission to find some delicious edible plants. And I'm lucky because Randy has superpowers. No, actually he has super knowledge about those plants. He's gonna show us how to find them.
This knowledge that I have actually does in fact give me superpowers for many different reasons. We'll get into that along with the plants that we're going to find. We have some wild leeks right around us. We'll find some spring beauties, some hopefully trout lilies, and maybe even some wild violets and a couple other things. So we're just going to take a walk around and see what we can find in this general little area right here.
Yay, let's do it. Okay, what do you have, Randy?
Alright, we are in a really nice area here next to the creek, at the top of a mountain in a pretty wooded area. This is an area of deciduous trees and a couple of pines and hemlocks here and there. It's partially shaded for now, and a lot of these green plants that you see coming up are only going to be here for a little while until the forest canopy grows in and makes everything more shaded. So these plants do like sunshine, but they're only going to get that sunshine for a couple more weeks. So these are the early spring plants. And if you want to come in a little bit closer here, we'll start with our first wild edible. These here are highly sought after by high-end restaurants and foragers like us, and these are wild leeks. And if you notice, these do come up from the same stalk, and they have 2 leaves. And these are one of the first plants that you're ever going to see in the springtime. And if you pick these, they really have a very strong onion smell. What do you think?
Yeah, even garlic.
A little bit of a garlicky onion smell. And that's a really good way to tell that you've got wild leeks, because there are not any other plants that do have that distinct onion smell. So when you do find a plant that you think might be a wild leek, make sure you check that. And if they smell like onion, you're pretty much good to go. Now if you come right here, just a little bit over, these plants can be pretty confusing for some people. When they first start to come up, and they're just a little bit of a point of a leaf, they can look very similar to the leeks, and obviously they grow in the same environment. This is false hellebore, and they are highly toxic. So you definitely want to be careful. Even if you're positive with your identification, you're going to want to be careful while you're picking, because you might just come in and pick a couple of these and accidentally get a little tip of this. And if you do that and mix it in with your meal later on, you're not going to be too happy. Now if we look right down here, this is another delicious wild edible, and these ones may not be the best example, so if you're gonna come right over here, we've got some more leaves here. A lot of people do know about these. These are wild violets. These are not flowering yet, but when they do flower, they will produce a small little purple flower. It's a distinct, everybody knows what violets look like. This is another really good wild edible. Yep, this absolutely. You can tell when they first come up, they always have that little bit of a curly end, and then when they do open up, they have a slight bit of a heart-shaped leaf, 1 leaf at the end of a stem, and they generally come up as a group, and you'll have several leaves coming off, and eventually, right in here someplace, I believe that is a baby little flower bud. And there's probably a few around that are flowering, but in a few weeks, or a couple days anyway, those will be full of flowers.
Okay, what do they taste like?
They are very mild, actually. They have a slight bit of a mucilaginous quality, which means they are a little bit thick and creamy feeling in your mouth, which is a good quality to have if you want to put them into a soup or a stew, or it also works really good in your salad, because if you put them in your salad and you get your salad dressing a little bit thicker, it helps it to cling to your salad. So a lot of times your salad dressing won't be a little bit watery like it is sometimes if you're using Italian or whatever. So that's a good quality for that, and mucilage is also very good for your body in many different ways, for cleansing and detoxification and that type of stuff. Now if you look right down here next to me, this is our next wild edible that we have right in the little area here. And these are pretty distinct. Everybody that's been walking in the woods at this time has probably seen these. They're the only leaf that I've ever seen that has this reddish purple and green mottled look to them. These are called trout lilies, and these are pretty numerous. The leaf is edible, the stem, and I didn't get it that time, but once in a while when you pull them up, it'll have a little root bottom called a corm, which is also edible and very delicious. When you do that though, you are destroying the entire plant, so if you just pick the leaves like this, the bulb can stay in the ground and still be alive. but generally they're so numerous, if you want to pick a few that have the bulbs, it's not going to hurt the population too much. And these have a little bit of almost a cucumbery quality, I've noticed. They've got a little bit of a spice, not quite as much as the wild leeks. So if you put a whole wild leek into your mouth and eat that right on, it's going to be pretty hot. Your mouth's going to burn for a little while. These will leave you off with a little bit of a burn if you eat a few, but it's not too bad. And like I said, it gives me a little bit of a cucumber kind of a flavor. So what do you say we go and try to find our next group of plants, or our next plant that we can find?
Well, that sounds great. Alright, we have more plants here?
Yes, we have a lot of plants here, as a matter of fact. If you can see behind me, this entire slope is basically a green carpet, totally filling the forest floor. And luckily for us, today, these are all wild leeks. They are pretty rare as a species. The population is not where it should be because of over-harvesting. These are actually considered a delicacy, and they're made by a lot of more expensive restaurants and that kind of stuff, and they will go and totally eliminate the whole population of wild leeks. So we're going to show you today the best way that you can harvest these and still pay respect to the population and make sure that you don't take too many. So if you come right down over here, as we mentioned earlier, you always want to make sure that you do have the two leaves. They always grow with two leaves. It's usually pretty purple at the bottom, but I have seen them only white. And occasionally I have seen three-leaved plants. So sometimes you're going to find these, and I'm not 100% positive about this, but I do think that it's a good possibility that these might be fully mature plants ready to go to seed when they have three leaves. Or it could just be a genetic difference that a few of them have. Anyway, let's find one that's not three, just in case, because they do take a few years to go to seed. This is one of the reasons why a population can be wiped out, because everybody will think that they'll just come back again next year, and they won't. And they also will not go to seed right away. So if you do need the bulbs at the bottom, which isn't really necessary, but we're going to show you today just for identification purposes anyway. They go down kind of deep, and you'll see that they do have a little bit of an oniony type of a bulb at the bottom, really similar to a scallion or a green onion. So for eating, we could just pull these right down, and that gets pretty clean. We'll want to wash that off later for eating anyway, but that's the entire plant. And these get pretty big. These are still a little small. They can get a little bit taller.
Do they flower?
Yes, they do. They do flower, and they do go to seed, and when you see the seeds, they will be on like a star pattern. You'll have a branch coming up, and then from that branch in a circular pattern you will see a whole bunch of little dark purple or black seeds. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to find some in our trip today.
Look at that, there's white flower. Is that it?
Actually no, but I'm glad you spotted that, because that's going to be our next wild edible that we're looking for.
Okay.
Good eye. This is actually a spring beauty. As a matter of fact, that's not a spring beauty. Good thing we were paying attention. That's what this is, isn't it? So, you want to pay attention to some details here. Let's count the petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 petals. Let's go right back here to what we know is a spring beauty. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. And these have distinctive purple lines on the petals, which isn't always that bright. Sometimes they will be a little bit washed out looking, and the color won't be quite as prominent. Anyway, these are a really good wild edible to be found. This is the entire plant. It just grows these two major leaves here and then flowers. And it completes its whole cycle within a couple of weeks. These are only found in very early spring. And these also have an edible root. The entire plant is edible. Another good identification characteristic is that they are so weak. And you can see that when I pull out the other plants here that have been supporting them, they basically fall right down. Anyway, that being said, they are very weak, and you're going to want to really make sure that you follow this all the way down. Luckily this one was just under the leaves, we don't have to dig much. But they have these little bottom root balls or corms. Once I get that cleaned off, they do have a pretty distinctive look to them. They always look kind of knobby at the end, and they always have a couple of these little hairs only coming out of the sides. And these front and back surfaces are pretty smooth. And you can definitely tell that's obviously the right one because it's connected to the plant still. Now when you come along here and you just dig a few of these up, you see how easy that comes off. So you're going to be really, really careful and make sure that you do trace that down all the way. And even though they're really small, usually, as you can see here, they are pretty numerous. And I've seen areas where the whole ground was just really covered with all these little spring beauties. And this is a very tasty green. They remind me of bean sprouts a little bit. These little bottom corms are kind of starchy, but when they're like this, they're really crispy and juicy and tasty. I've never tasted any bit of a bitterness with these. They don't have a sharp quality or any really majorly distinct, outstanding flavor, but they are just kind of nice like a bean sprout, and they're really good for your salad greens. Spring beauty. So if you do want to enjoy these leeks as an incredibly delicious vegetable, and you want to make sure that you preserve the population, the best way to do that is to just pull the green, because this entire green part is just as oniony and just as flavorful as the root bottom. A lot of people just for some reason are fixated on the idea that they need that bottom bulb of the onion or whatever for their purposes, but this is just as good, and these are a really delicious green for your salads, and also they're really good for stir fries and just as a cooked vegetable of their own. So if you want to make sure that you preserve the population of your leek patch, just go around and pick the green. And like I said, the plants have a double leaf, so it's better to just pick one leaf. Pick one leaf off of that, and the plant can still produce its nutrients through photosynthesis, and the root will stay alive for next year, and you don't hurt the population any, but you still get to have some nice delicious greens.
Okay. Do we have any other plants around here?
Yes, as a matter of fact, just over a little bit, we have another really nice trout lily. You can see the nice mottled purple and green leaf. Like I said, I've never seen any other plants that have that look, that have this shape of a leaf. There is another plant that has a three-part different shaped leaf that has a little bit of that purple mottled look, but this is the only plant that I've ever seen that has that distinct appearance. And a really good identifying feature, if you can find them, is this nice yellow flower. And a lot of times you'll see these just as one, like this, one leaf, and it's when they come up as a double leaf that the plant has reached maturity and is ready to go to flower. And a little bit after that flower there will be a seed, and that's how that plant reproduces.